Now, we're our speaker. I would like to introduce this morning John Anderson. And his talk is on creating a new meaning, claiming our destiny.
All right.
Synchronicity is all around us. Our thoughts are prayers. Our thoughts are prayers. And we are always praying. The title of my talk today is Creating New Meaning, Claiming Our Destiny. Last night was the culmination of several weeks of synchronous events that just have been cascading down. And I've been watching it taking place and noting it and kind of surprised, and yet, just still being surprised, and, is this synchronicity or not that I'm seeing? But last night was the culmination. So I'm sitting at my computer working on today's talk, and I have just written how Susan Finley had the treasure mapping class, and during it, Susan introduces me to Carrie and talks about the class that Carrie is teaching. I just typed those words, and I just typed Carrie's name, and the phone rings. And Carrie is on the phone asking if I would like to think about doing more music lessons after this class that we're involved in, concludes. And I'm like, I have just typed your name. And it was like, in the amount of time it took for me to type her name, she started dialing. So, yeah. So, in the course of us talking for, 10 minutes, I say, well, Unity is tomorrow, and why don't you bring your guitar? And I'm, it's not like we're all musicians doing a jam session here, but it just seemed like the right thing to say. And I said, maybe you can play with Vonnie. And then I get off the phone, I'm like, oh dear, is that a good idea, So I reviewed the idea with Kate, and I'm like, I think it's time to call Vonnie. I call Vonnie on the phone. Vonnie is like, coughing. Oh, John, I'm not going to go to church. I go, well, you'd never guess what just happened. And Vonnie goes, no accident. Carrie is doing the music tomorrow. So then I call Carrie back a minute later, and Carrie's like surprised. She's getting a call back, and instead of being the accompanist, you are going to be the performer. Surprise! Here's Kate. So that was like a crescendo of events that have been taking place in my life. And as I've mentioned, it all started last month when we had the annual meeting, and one of the things in the annual meeting that we decided was to do a holistic health fair, and Christy and Joanne and a number of people and Penny have been jumping in and starting to get that organized. And then another is the idea that we're going to rent out the building for special events, celebrations and birthday parties and things like that, performances. And so that's another piece that we're working on as a fundraising event. So, and then in the course of that was also Susan announcing the treasure mapping. So Kate and I did the treasure mapping and met Carrie, and I'm like, tune up your inner musician. It was like, that was nowhere in my plan. Nowhere in my plan. And I'm like, all of a sudden it's like a light is going on. Oh, you're going to go to that class. What do you mean I'm going to go to that class? Why would I be going? All right, I'll go to the class. Right? So in the course of the class, the first class, Carrie brings out, 10 books, and one of them immediately goes boing to me, and it's, this is your brain on music. Oh. Now, last year, one of my projects has been Denny talking about this great book, The Brain That Changes Itself. Now, both my parents had Alzheimer's, and Kate's mom probably has Alzheimer's. I mean, that's the reason we're here and we're not in Coos Bay, is because of the situation of helping Dorothy. So brain fitness is really important to me. And even with Dorothy's short-term memory like it is, I keep thinking I tell her about the book, and then a moment later, I bring up something and she's forgotten what I just told her. I've been wanting to play the book, and Kate's like, yeah, right, so, you know, she's not going to pay attention, John. No, I'll explain it to her. I explain it to her. Okay, I'm going to put the book on. What book? So, I don't know. Hope springs eternal here. So, this has all been the flood of things going on, and so I decided that I'm going to have a new project, and there's a series of new projects. Why? Because of this funky cold. This is the January doldrums. I've been coughing and eating, I can't tell you how many hundreds of cough drops. You know, Kate just buys several bags at a time now for me. And, you know, Bonnie is sick, and half of us have been sick, and half the world is sick, it seems like. So I want to challenge everyone today to identify a personal project that you'd like to work on, and pick out one of the Unity projects that we're working on, whether that's, you know, sometimes we've done the rest stops. You know, that's a project that could be done, or the holistic health fair. It's coming up really quick. We're going to need a lot of help on that. It's March the 30th. And then the other is helping to promote our building to do more rentals. We had a number of rentals last year, and we can do more this year. And we can use the funds that we generate to do things like improve the floor in the garden room, or work on the roof, or work on other projects to help the building. So I'm committing right here, right now, that this is my destiny. I'm claiming my destiny. That was an insight I had like early Saturday morning. I wake up early in the morning with these like blinding revelations. So Saturday morning's blinding revelation was that this talk that I've been developing, it's my destiny. So I had to go to dictionary.com to look up the difference. And there's some subtleties between fate and destiny. You know, fate is something that happens to us. Destiny is something that we claim and we declare. So I'm claiming right here, right now, that I'm claiming my destiny, and it's creating new meaning. So I create new meaning, I create projects. I mean, that's what my business is. I create projects for clients. But most of the time, I spend all my time on business. So I'm working to have more balance in my life by having some projects that are not all business projects. So I have a music project now. And then I have a health and wellness. I have a brain fitness. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So it's been on my mind, because I'm in a wait and see kind of a situation here. So the first year, 2011, I took Chinese herbs. And over the course of 9 months, I'd have blood tests, and my scores went to normal. So I go to my urologist, and I show him the bottles, and meanwhile I'd gone to this Chinese herb store, and I had sacks full of Chinese herbs, and I'm showing him all the things, and he's like, he had no clue at all. He goes, I don't know anything about this. He goes, but there's one way you'll know for sure. Stop taking them. So last year, I stopped taking them. And guess what? My scores have gone up. So last month, another new thing I've done is I found a naturopath in Damascus, Oregon, and she's got me on a regimen of more supplements and things. And then Friday, I went to the naturopathic college and hung out in the library in the bookstore, just looking at book after book. I was looking for a book I could use for today's talk. I left without getting a book. They were all textbooks, and it took me a couple of hours to look through book after book after book until I realized, oh, I got a phone call. I got a phone call, so I had to go outside and go, good, okay, now I'm out. Now I'm out. Time to get in the car, go home. So, this is my series of projects. And I want to invite each of you to really think of a project, a community project, and then your own project. And then what is a way that you can, by you being involved in a community project, it will advance your personal project. Penny has done some wonderful things. We built a Gmail account, and Penny's been getting really expert at Gmail and the Google Documents, and there's a whole structure, and we're using it now to hold the projects, and the speakers and do press releases and that sort of thing. So that's an example of using using a community project to advance a personal skill and knowledge. One thing I need on my project about the building rental is I need photographs. Who's got photographs? I need photographs, I need rental information, because every time I think about, well, I need to put that on the website. Well, what am I going to put on the website? So if anybody has photographs of events or information, board members, I need that to put that on. So I'm seeing a direct correlation because of the books that Carrie has introduced me to. This is Your Brain on Music. That in it, they're saying that music predates language. It's been a widely held idea by scholars that that music is like frosting on the cake of language, and that it's a nice thing we do. But there's research now that actually the reason that we have language is because there's been so much, many years of us doing music. They found the oldest musical instrument is a flute made from I believe it's the femur of like a buffalo. And it's a flute, 50,000-year-old flute. And if there was a flute 50,000 years ago, how many more years were they using drums and rattles before they developed a flute from a femur? And so there is a lot of information in this book on This Is Your Brain in Music about the incredible distinctions that our brains make from timing, tempo, pitch, the contour of music, that you can have the same E note, the pitch E, but if it's played by a violin, played by a guitar, if it's an open E versus a fretted E versus the E on a piano. Now they're all strings, they're all E, but we instantly know and we can clearly identify subtle differences also in timing and duration and the sequence. So we're using these senses that we gain from our music understanding in our external world and in our interpretation in dealing with other people. And by us gaining greater understanding of these things for ourselves, we're able to alter how we present ourselves to others, and we're able to control to a greater degree how we're perceived and experienced, and therefore the world that we directly experience. And this goes back to the fundamental unity principle that which we hold in mind, we create. So these books, this new research is substantiating the fundamental principles that New Thought and Unity have espoused for the last 150 years. That as we think, therefore we live and we create and we experience. And if we aren't happy with the way that our lives are, we can start to change our lives by changing how we think. And by gaining new tools and understanding and seeing subtle ways to control our thoughts and our mental processes, we're able to do things that have been considered impossible to do. In these 3 books, the Brain That Changes Itself, this is Your Brain on Music, and the 3rd book is The Talent Code. They talk about, in the Talent Code, they talk about how the more the neuron fires, when we do the same activity over and over again, that a variety of things take place in that neuron. First of all, other neurons grow to support that firing. And this is when we repeat a habit and we build a skill, that skill becomes expert, more and more expert. It takes 10,000 hours to gain expertise. 10,000 hours, that's roughly just shy of 3 hours a day, 20 hours a week, 1,000 hours a year, 10 years, 10,000 hours, and then you have world-class expertise in a subject. And it's the firing of those neurons over and over and over, because what's happening is a fatty tissue gets wrapped around the neurons, the individual neuron and the clusters of neurons, and it prevents, it's like an insulation that prevents the leaking of the energy out of the neuron. So there's this whole series of things that happen when we practice over and over. And what's called the firing rate, because the ganglia on one end, the tree-like branches that accept energy into the neuron, they gather it, and the energy gathers in the nucleus, and it's held there like a capacitor. And the energy is held there, and as more and more charge comes in, the charge builds up until it reaches what's called a firing point. And once that firing point is reached, then the electrical current shoots down the axon of the nerve cell and goes across the dendrites, which are the branches at the other end, and they reach the ganglia of the next nerve. So, and no, the ganglia and the dendrites don't touch, that they arc. The electrical impulse arcs across the space, and neuropeptides, which are fluid that conduct electrical current, are there to facilitate that transfer from the ganglia of one to, well, from the dendrites of one to the ganglia of the next neuron. And so this whole series of things happens. The more that nerve fires, the lower the firing point becomes, so that it'll fire faster. The greater the neuropeptides form between the ganglia and the dendrites, which facilitates the electrical transfer. The whole process gets easier and easier. So when we are very adept at a particular skill, it's because of that practice of the firing. And insights, and having insights and new understandings might well be when new dendrites reach new ganglia, and there's connections between new neurons, and new patterns are formed, and all of a sudden we get a new insight. So when you have an insight and an understanding and an aha, maybe synchronicity is one of these. All of a sudden there's this duh. Physiologically what's occurring is our dendrites and ganglia are stretching, growing, and connecting. One of the ideas is that the way that we were all taught growing up is that when we're born, we are given a certain number of neurons, and that's it. Neurons don't regenerate, they don't repair themselves. When they're dead, and they're gone. That's now been turned upside down. And we are creating new neurons, and our neurons are growing and repairing ourselves right until death. And that we can have plaque, and we can have illness in our brains, but we can stimulate other healthy parts of our brain And we can have parts of our brain that are healthy start doing the parts that were either damaged. So there are people who were blind, who now are seeing. People who were deaf, who are now hearing, because they're putting new sensory devices, hooking people up with new sensory devices. And even though they don't have eyes, they're being able to see. Even though their ears, their auditory canals have been damaged or wounded, they're able to hear. And they're connecting new ways to the tongue and other parts of the body that are regenerating functionality in the brain that was considered outlandish and was ridiculed, but is now becoming established fact and knowledge. So these are the kinds of things in these new books I see it as a perfect connection. It's like, new thought. It's like, if you hold it in your mind, we can create. And that's what we're doing. We are creating. So I want to ask each one of you to think of a project that you personally are committed to and is important to you. And then think of a project here at our community that you can participate in and jump into. And ask for the support of other people to help you, and in turn offer them support in their projects. And we will all move forward together. And we will all claim our destiny together. At this point, I'd like to do a brief meditation. So if you want to close your eyes for a moment. So thoughts are prayers. Our thoughts are our prayers. There's power in what we're saying. Seeking higher consciousness, a place of peacefulness. For God's pure grace is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. What is your destiny? Bring your project to mind. Is there a way your personal project can link with one of our community projects? We're all seeking to be healthy, happy, and fulfilled. What is your destiny? Thank you.